Bismillah. It's just an hour, maybe. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So alhamdulillah, we've reached. We only have about 3 ayats left, and then within these 3 ayats, there is a lot to cover actually. So we'll go ahead and get started, inshallah. Just a short recap. The previous ayats, we left off at the scene where the brothers went back to Yaqub alayhi salam. The brothers are speaking with the father, Yaqub alayhi salam. And when he went back with the Bashir being ultimately the shirts that Yusuf alayhi salam with the brothers as a message and proof for his father to show indeed that Yusuf alayhi salam exists, and he is indeed now overlooking Egypt. So because of that, we explained that Yaqub alayhi salam regained his vision, that once the shirt was thrown on top of his face, that either a miracle happened where the shirt itself returned the vision of Yaqub alayhi salam, or in another opinion, he came to realize, or he came to know that the truth in which Yusuf alayhi salam is indeed, in fact, the minister of Egypt. So they had a conversation between the brothers and Yaqub, and they knowing that they have done wrong, asking their father to ask Allah to forgive them. And the father responded by saying, "Sawfa astaghfiru lakum Rabbi innahu huwal ghafurur rahim." And that Yaqub alayhi salam was going to ask Allah to forgive his sons. And we explained that Sawfa in Arabic would be at a later time, in a close proximity. So some of the scholars actually mentions that actually Tafseer ibn Sa'di, he says, قال مجيبا لطلبهم, answering their request, مسرعا لإجابتهم سوف أستغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم رجاء به أن يغفر لكم يرحمكم وتغمدكم برحمته وقد قيل أنه آخر الاستغفار لهم إلى وقت السحر الفاضل. So what Tafseer ibn Sa'di, he mentions that um, that Yaqub alayhi salam wanted to wait till a time where it's called the Sahr al-Fadil, a time in which it was the middle of the night. And in Islam, we understand that in the middle of the night, Allah nazzal, or he descends upon the lowest heaven, asking for those who wants to ask for forgiveness. And he was waiting for this time to ask for a sin that they did, which is such a major sin, that he wanted to make sure that he was at his best state, at his best time, asking Allah for forgiveness for his sons after what they did. And this is another element that shows that Yaqub alayhi salam truly loved his sons. Now, if you love somebody, or if you don't love somebody, the last thing you will do is care to even think their well-being between them and Allah. If you really do not like somebody, the last thing you'll think about is to ask Allah to forgive them. So if you truly care for a brother, for example, or if you truly care for your wife or your family, the true care through showing that you really love them is not through just providing for their for food. It's not providing giving them gifts every Eid, right? Yes, it shows that you do care, you love them, you care for them. But a different level, or an extra level to show that you really care, is if they exist in your dua. If a person exists in your dua and you're calling, you're naming that person, that shows love. In fact, one of the Salaf, they mention that I would make dua for 70 of my brothers by name. He would make dua and he would mention their name to Allah in their dua. Now, who today would even make dua for one brother in their own dua, specifically naming them, saying, Abdurrahman, may Allah have mercy on him. May Allah elevate him for his status in Jannah. Does that make sense? Like mentioning their name specifically in your dua shows you how much you care for that brother. Right? Now Yaqub alayhi salam, this is another proof or evidence to show that yes, maybe his heart was attached to Yusuf alayhi salam, but that does not take away from his love towards his other sons. Right? So he wanted to make dua, asking Allah to forgive his sons. Now, reach to ayah number 99. Ayah number 99. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقالوا ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين. Now this ayah, this ayah from the previous ayah is a huge gap, and we mentioned this a lot while telling the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And I wanted to mention it again because throughout the entire Quran, we notice that every time Allah tells a story, or every time Allah reveals something for us to learn, there is a lot of the story that is missing, a lot of details that is missing from the story. And it is details where it's not normally found in regular storytelling, right? If you pick up a novel, for example, if you pick up a book, a storybook, and you read the storybook, the author of that story tends to provide like visual details where you can kind of follow the story along. Right? For example, a person is walking on the street. The author would try to help you visualize the way that person is walking in the street. Like he would walk briskly, and his eyes are making sure that he's looking at what he's going to. Right? All of those details, you can kind of visualize the way that person is walking. He's walking in a fast pace, and his eyes is concentrated on his destination. He's not looking around here. He's making sure that when he's walking, he's walking for a goal. Right? That's how authors write the story, because the author wants the reader to follow along in each and every step. To play with your emotions, because let's just say that person reaches that place and he finds that his father is dead. Now you know why he's walking so quickly. Now you know why he's not paying attention to anything else except for his destination, because he was worried for his father. I'm just making this up, right? All of the details that explains the way he's walking, the where he is, the destinations he's going to. In the Quran, we don't find this too often. And if we do find it, if we find the name of the destination, if we find how a person is feeling, for example, it is only for us to benefit. Allah only adds it in the Quran so that we can benefit from the main points, or the main message, or the lesson that Allah wants for us to know. Right? So in this case, the last ayah that we just read, Yaqub alayhi salam was wanting to ask Allah to forgive his sons. Ayah number 99, فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى Yusuf. And when they all enter upon Yusuf. Now who's they? Who's all of them? It is the entire family of Yaqub alayhi salam. Each and every son, and each and every one of their wives and their children, for example. Every single son and daughter of Yaqub alayhi salam and his progeny has now entered Egypt. But they were just in Canaan, weren't they? They just came back with a shirt and they just threw it on the face of their father. They were just in Palestine, the ayah previously. But now Allah skips all of that because it doesn't matter. Do you understand? It's very interesting how Allah tells a story, and compared to the stories of like the Ahlul Kitab, for example, right? They have the story of Yusuf. They know the story. They know the story of Yaqub alayhi salam. In fact, the way they tell their story is a lot more. They have more details. I'll share with you this fact. The name of the mother of Yusuf alayhi salam. Now, don't take this as complete evidence, but this is noted in the books of Ahlul Kitab. Right? So we don't take it as truth, but we take it as information. The name of Yusuf, the name of the mother of Yusuf, they call her Rachel, or Rikhal, or something like that, right? Rachel in English. So they have details and a lot of information. But what's interesting is that the story that Allah tells about Yusuf seems to be more condensed, but it gives so much more lessons compared to Ahlul Kitab. They have a bigger book, for example, like more details of Yusuf, but you learn so much more of Yusuf in the Quran, and it's smaller. That's how amazing the way Allah tells us, the story, the best of stories. So, right? So, Now, فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا, and when they entered upon Yusuf alayhi salam, آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ. Yusuf, he embraced his parents. Yusuf, it's now these words should be familiar, because not too long ago, when he first saw Binyamin for the first time, what did he do to him? Awa ilayhi akhahu, or awa ilayhi akhahu. He embraced and he pulled Binyamin to himself. He took refuge, or he became a refuge or a place of security for his brother. Because we know that his brother, we explained this before, his brother was going through a lot of things with the other brothers, right? Just how they did to Yusuf, they were doing to Binyamin. So, inshallah, we'll break it down word by word, inshallah. But I wanted to kind of focus on the word awa a little bit. We explained this before, but to really understand the scene that's going on here, to really understand the emotions behind just one word, awa, the emotions behind that. Finally, when Yusuf alayhi salam sees his son, when Yusuf alayhi salam sees and reunites with his father, this is what he does. Awa ilayhi abawayhi. Now the word awa, it is used several times in the Quran. One example is, well, to understand what it means in Arabic, what it means is now, for example, it says at-tawa at-tayr. It means, like, you know how a bird, when a bird flies together, it seems strong. Right? When a bird flies together, there's a group, they call it a flock of birds. Why? Because it's together. Now, if there is just one single bird, there's no power behind it. It can be taken away by a predator. So when you're saying awa, when one bird comes into a flock, comes together, it gives it a sense of security. Right? Like, it doesn't have to carry, like when brothers walk together, for example. If you're walking by yourself to the masjid, you don't have protection. You don't feel safe, especially in Seattle, right? It's like there's a lot of shootings. You don't feel safe when you're just alone. But when you're walking with a lot of other people, other men, it gives a sense of security. You have that security. So awa, it's used to seek refuge out of something, right? To give the example, in the story of Nuh alayhi salam, it is said that his son, in the ayah, قَالَ سَآوِي إِلَى الْجَبَلِ. The son said to his father, Nuh alayhi salam, he says, no, I don't want to get onto the boat with you. Rather, سَآوِي إِلَى الْجَبَلِ. I will seek refuge, security. I'll be safe in the mountain, because there's no way that the water will reach that high, or so he thought. Right? So he says, I will seek refuge. The word awi here, it's a sense of security. You're seeking the security from something, right? And again, in Surah Kahf, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إذ أوى الفتنة إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. So the story of the youth, where they come from like a people or a nation who was full of fitna. And they wanted to get away from the fitna. And what did they do? إِذْ أَوَلْ فِتْنَةُ إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. They wanted to seek refuge in the cave from the fitna, a sense of danger, right? Just like the water was a sense of danger to the son of Nuh. So awa, you're seeking safety from something that's causing you danger, right? Now, in the case of Yusuf alayhi salam, he says, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains that Yusuf alayhi salam, he took his parents, awa ilayhi abaway. He became the safety for his parents. So his parents found safety with him. Just from that one word, you really can understand the scene here, right? Now, what's interesting about this is that if we look in the scenario, right? What's going on here? The father, Yaqub alayhi salam, imagine just being in his shoes. We've explained that for decades, he was going through a lot of stress and internal struggles. For years. Not only that, but he had family members who didn't support him. His own sons did not support him through his, mental, emotional struggles, right? On top of that, he was going through famine. Remember, the 7 years of famine we talked about from the dream of the king, right? They were going through famine. And in Canaan, we can see their condition. The condition of the family of Yaqub alayhi salam. When the brothers came back for the last time, for the last time seeking help, they said that this is all we have. Bida'atin muzjat. Is the things that we have to sell to you has no value. This is all we have. What does that tell you about the condition of Canaan? What does that tell you about the condition of the family of Yaqub? They were in dire need. They were very poor. And this is all they had left. To say in a different word, if they didn't work out this last transaction, this last business transaction with the things that they have, if it didn't work out, they would starve. They didn't have anything left. This was their last chance. So you can imagine, as a father who cannot provide for his own family. Now, fathers here, you know how it feels when you reach a certain age and you reach retirement. The worry that you feel, the heaviness that you feel in your heart because you know that you don't have the strength anymore to take care of your family. That is a heavy burden to carry. It's very heavy on men. Yaqub alayhi salam, not only he had 5, 6, 7 kids, he had 12 kids. And each and every single one of the kids have kids and have family. They have a huge family. And he is the leader. And not only that, he is a Rasul, a Nabi. Afwan. He was a messenger of Allah. Right? All of this responsibility is on his shoulders. So when you finally see the scene, ayah number 99, when he finally sees his son and embraces his son, the emotions behind the scene is very hard to explain. You can just imagine what's going on, And Allah explains it with just one word. Awa ila ilayhi abaway. So if you understand the word awa, it is a deeper understanding of what's going on in the scene. Now, I want to move back a little bit because I want to jump forward to focus on the scene, to set the scene, and I jumped ahead to explain the word awa. So let's go back. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ. Now the word dakhala means that they've entered upon Yusuf, right? Dakhalu is in a form of them all. Referring to some of the scholars mentioned that it is all of the family members. So based off of this, we know that Bani Israel, the Jews. Now, I think I mentioned this briefly. The name of Yaqub alayhi salam, he has another name that he's known by. And that name is Israel. His name is Israel. Now, when you say Bani Israel, it is the people of Yaqub. So, in this very moment, right now, it is the very first time that Jews entered into Egypt. So if we fast forward into the story of Musa alayhi salam, when the Jews were being persecuted by Fir'aun, the reason why the Jews were there in the first place was because of Yusuf. Allah provided them, saved them, preferred them, chose them out of everyone to get them out of Philistine and put them into Egypt. Why? Because of Yusuf. So when you do something and you don't even think, like when you do something for the sake of Allah, just like Yusuf alayhi salam, he did it out of the kindness of his heart. Because he could have easily said, forget my brothers. Forget them. They threw me in a well, I'm going to leave them in Canaan. Forget all of them. I'm just going to take my parents. That's it. Khalas. He could have easily done that. And being in a position that he was, it would have been easy for him. But instead, because of the kindness of his heart, he brought every single one of his family members into Egypt. And because of that, all of Bani Israel now lives in Egypt up until the time of Musa. You see the history is because of one man. Because of his taqwa in Allah. Because of his taqwa, Allah saved his whole entire progeny. Do you see? Now, when we have taqwa, the rewards of having taqwa is boundless. It has no bounds. We don't know the rewards of Allah. You do what you can to the best of your ability, and Allah will take care of the rest. Allah will take care of your children. Allah will take care of your house, your family, your children, your aqriba, those who are close to you, your relatives, your grandparents. Allah will take care of everything. You do your part to the best of your ability. Because everything else is out of your hands. You can do so much. The power that you have is only to a certain limit, but the power with Allah is limitless. And we see this with Yusuf. Because of his taqwa, Allah took care of generations to come in his bloodline. Right? وَدَخَلُوا عَلَى Yusuf. Now, one of the things to mention here is that some of the mufassirun, they mention that this is Yusuf's father coming. Yusuf alayhi salam sent he sent an entourage, or like security, like to escort his entire family to Egypt. Now, if you refer back to the story of Yusuf, the story of Musa, when Musa alayhi salam, when he wanted to return to Egypt, in Surah Taha, he wanted to return to Egypt because he missed his mom. Now, when he's taking this trip back to Egypt, remember he enters upon a valley of Tuwa, right? Why? Because he wanted to seek guidance, to ask to show him the way, or the right way, because he was lost, right? Or he could even find light so he can bring it back to set up camp with his wife. The scholars mention that Musa alayhi salam and his wife did not take the direct road to Egypt. Why? Because that road was dangerous. That road straight to Egypt was a dangerous road. Now, we understand that because if we look into, like business, any road that leads to an economically booming city, if a road that is known to be taken towards a city that is rich and has business, be sure that road, you would have thieves and bandits set up shop on that road, because it's known that people with high value merchandise would take this road with their caravan, and they would walk this road. For thieves and bandits, they would take that opportunity to steal, right? So it's a dangerous road. So instead of taking that road, especially Musa alayhi salam, he was wanted for killing the people of Fir'aun accidentally. So he took a different route and he gets lost. Now, going back to the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, same thing there. With Egypt, if you take the main road, it is a road that is dangerous. So some of the Mufassirun says that Yusuf alayhi salam sent an entourage with that shirt to get Yaqub and his family back to Egypt safe. And it's interesting because Yusuf alayhi salam, he actually mentions at the end of the ayah, he says, Insha'Allah aminin, so that you will come with safety, right? But we'll explain aminin at the end, inshallah. And he says, Awa ilahi abaway, as we explained, he pulled his parents to him. Now, the word abawayhi here refers to two people, which is the father and the mother. It's a bit interesting because the mother has never been mentioned in the story of Yusuf. Never. The only time that we can kind of suggest that she was mentioned is in the dream in the beginning of the story. Ash-shamsu wal-qamar ra'aytuhum li sajidin. That's the moon and the sun, meaning referring to who? Referring to the mother and father. Making sujood to Yusuf. That was the only time. Up until this ayah. And it is pretty much the end of the story now. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, he doesn't explain, he uses the word abaway. He takes both of his mother and his father to him for safety and refuge. right? So the Sheikh, the Mufassir by Fakhruddin al-Razi, he explains this in two opinions. He says you can either take this in two ways. The first way is that the mother that is there. Now we previously mentioned that the mother actually passed away due to childbirth when giving birth to Binyamin. So many scholars mention that she has passed away already. She has passed away. Fakhruddin al-Razi, he mentions that the person he's embracing is actually by the biological mother who passed away. And he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fulfill his dream, he brought his mother back to life and took her from the grave and sent her to Yusuf alayhi salam, just for that dream to be fulfilled. Because we know that the dreams of prophets are wahi. The dreams of prophets are true. So to make this true, Allah resurrected or brought the mother of Yusuf back to life just to fulfill the dream. That's opinion number one. The second opinion, which is a bit more logical, however, like we said, I mentioned in the beginning, with Allah, things in this life is boundless, is limitless. So for us to believe in miracles is, how would you say it? For Muslims to believe in miracles is not far-fetched. It's not something that we like, oh, we can't believe that. No, because we read the miracle every single day, inshallah. The Quran is something of a miracle. And if we don't believe that, for Allah to resurrect someone is less of a miracle than the Quran itself. Right? So the second opinion is that the person that he's embracing is indeed, in fact, his mother's sister, meaning his aunt. Right? So after she passed away, Yaqub alayhi salam married her sister. And the sister assumed the position of the mother for both children, Yaqub and Yusuf and Binyamin. So the one who assumes the responsibility of the position of your mother is your mother. And in foster what's it called? Foster parenting, or rida'a, like breastfeeding children, right? The mother might not be the biological mother of the child, but he will still call her right? So these are the two opinions that were shared, that I came across. Now, it's interesting because we can gain a lot of lessons and understanding just from this ayah. We're just halfway, right? So one thing we can take from is that Yusuf alayhi salam, the way he treats his not just everyone around him, right? From his enemies to the prisoners in the prison cell, or people in higher up positions, or the people who are trying to seduce him. In every case that we see him interacting with other people, the way he interacts with them is with kindness. The words that he uses is very thought out. His responses are very fully thought out. He makes sure that he doesn't harm somebody, or what's that word, you don't want to make somebody feel bad. Like you want to make sure that you're careful with your words, so that you don't offend anyone. You don't want to offend the other person. And you see this with both Yusuf alayhi salam and Yaqub. Yaqub with his family, and Yusuf with everybody else. Right? It's a lesson that we need to internalize, because we tend to be just human beings. The way we speak with others or with people, sometimes it comes across like a very offensive way, and you don't mean it in that way, but but with Yaqub and Yusuf alayhi salam, every single time they have an interaction, even when he was trying to defend himself, when he said that is indeed she was the one that tried to seduce me, but he said it in a way where she didn't even get offended by it, right? And that was the only conflict that he had. So treating those, not just everyone around, but people who are close to you. Because as we mentioned before, it is more likely the case that when a person is close to you, is more likely that you would have issues with that person. The closer a person is to you, the more likely that you have conflicts or issues with that person, right? So treating people who are close to you in a good way is exemplified with Yusuf. Exemplified. Ahsan. He does ihsan with the way he treats his relatives. And even more so, he does ihsan when it comes to treating his parents. The next ayah, what he does to his parents, it is treating your parents in the best way you can. And we'll explain that in the upcoming class, inshallah. So, in Islam, we know that treating one person specifically the same as your mother. Okay, I want to repeat that again. Who is the person that you treat the best in this world? After Allah and His Rasul. It is your mother. But there is a hadith and proofs and evidence that there is somebody who is either not is either right at the level of your mother, if not after her. Right? So Abi Dawood, he mentioned this Sahih Albani, mentions that للخالة منزلة كريمة في الإسلام. So al-khala, it is the sister of your mother. Khala, it is the sister of your mother. Amma, it is the sister of your father. Right? So specifically it says khala, للخالة منزلة الكريمة في الإسلام وهي بمنزلة الأم. And she is at the level of the mom. Right? And it says, عن علي رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال الخالة بمنزلة الأم. It is said by Ali ibn Abi Talib, he narrates that the Prophet Muhammad says that the khala, the aunt of the mother, specifically, it is at the level of your mom. Right? So if you're thinking, so when I'm reading this, I want you to think about how Yusuf alayhi salam is treating both the persons in front of him. Whether it's the mom or the aunt, doesn't matter. But he's treating both of them the same, right? So Al-Dhahabi, he says in Al-Kabair, in his book, he says the meaning of this hadith, it says fil birri wal ikram was sila. He says the meaning behind this is that you treat them the same level is as you treat them with bir, with full, like how you say bir, like birrul walidain. How do you explain that? It is like, it's respect and, good treatment to your parents, right? So with good treatment to your parents, you show this same good treatment to your khala, your aunt. And in kiram wasila. So kiram is utmost respect and closeness, right? And this is what he explained the hadith. Another hadith that says, an Ibn Umar, أن رجلا أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله إني أصبت ذنبا عظيما فهل لي توبة. There was a man who came to the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. He asked, he says, indeed I have done something I've done a sin that is a great sin, is an egregious sin. So will there be tawbah for me? Will I be able to make tawbah from it? The Prophet Muhammad responds, he says, قال هل لك هل لك من الأم. He says, do you have a mother? And he responds by saying, no, I don't. And then he says, Rasulullah says, هل لك من الخالة. He says, then do you have an aunt? Or does your mom have a sister? And he says, yes. And then he says, فَبِرَّهَا. Then treat her well. What does that mean here? He says, first he asked if he has a mother. If he had a mother, he would have said, فَبِرَّهَا. Treat her well. But since he didn't have a mother, he went to the next person after her. And the next person was his aunt. And then he says, فَبِرَّهَا. Treat her well. So in this sense, the manzila, the level of a khala, if it's not at the same level of the mother, it should be right after her. In treatment, in good treatment, and in closeness. Right? Another hadith by Abu Dawood. It is narrated that Aisha, she goes to the Prophet Muhammad she says to him, she says that all of my friends have a kunya. And this is pretty interesting because Aisha, we know that she doesn't have children, right? To have a kunya, typically you would be named after your child, your eldest child. So she's going to complain to the Prophet Muhammad, I don't have a kunya. It shows like she's very innocent, you know. And she goes to her husband saying that all my friends have a kunya. You know, they have this thing that they share amongst themselves, but they call me Aisha. I don't have a kunya, right? So he responds to her, he says, call yourself by the name of your son. Wait a second, she doesn't have a son. But he says, call yourself by the name of your son, Abdullah. Who's Abdullah? Yes, you're Abdullah. But in the hadith, meaning the son of her sister. Who's her sister? Asma. And who's her son? Abdullah ibn Zubair. Right? So for her to assume the kunya, now if you understand what a kunya is naming yourself. Your name is Abdullah, for example. The name of your first child. Your own child, you're naming yourself after the mother of this person. Now, if you're the mother of your sister's son, what does that tell you? That the manzilatul is with the khala, is at the same level, right? So it gives you the understanding that it should give you actually a newfound respect for your khala. If your khala is still alive, you should treat her with the utmost respect. Just how you treat your mother, treat your mother's sister with the same respect. Now we get to the last portion of this ayah. This is very powerful. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam, after he embraced his parents, he tells his family Now imagine the whole entire family is there. There's a procession. He is the minister of Egypt, the right-hand man of the king. And no doubt that the entire country notices this whole thing happening. So like, who are all these people? Now we're talking about, it can't be no less than 70 people. I would argue that it is in its hundreds, because you have, let's say, you have 10 brothers, okay? And who knows if Benjamin is married? So let's just say 11. And each of them has wives, right? And each of them maybe has multiple wives. And each of the multiple wives has children. And who knows? The eldest children may have been married, and they have their own children of their own. Right? So we're talking about generations here. Every single one of them were taken into Egypt. And they were taken into Egypt with out that the entire country realizes something is going on here. Right? So now you understand the power in which Yusuf alayhi salam has, the authority and the control that he has, right? He can do this. And this also tells you another thing. The king, the actual king of Egypt, had so much trust with Yusuf that Yusuf was able to do this. He can give passports to anybody he wants. Do you understand? Anybody who crosses that border, Yusuf has the ability to say, yes, you can go. Go ahead. Keep going. You too. Oh, you, never mind. Stay back. You had to go through some kind of, you had to go through the TSA and get checked and stuff like that, right? Do you understand? The power that he had was to the point where the king gave him full reign. Okay? Now, he says to his family, he says, وَقَالَ دُخُلُوا, enter, all of you, Misra, enter Egypt. Remember, he's giving them the permission to enter Egypt. Egypt is the #1 place that everybody wants to go to at this time. They were the powerhouse in the world. They had everything because of Yusuf's plan, because of how he planned the next 14 years, where everybody else didn't have that information. He was able to save enough to not only support and have enough for Egypt itself, but he had enough for the surrounding countries, where countries had to seek help from Egypt because of the famine. Right? They were the powerhouse of that time. Now, he says, pay close attention to what Yusuf alayhi salam is saying here. He says, وَقَالُوا دُخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. Now you're talking about you're talking about a person who has control, full authority, a person who has his own throne in the most powerful country in the world. And yet he still says, come into Egypt by the will of Allah, with safety and security. This is Yusuf. When he had full authority, when a person has patience during time of difficulty, is one thing to understand that's something difficult, a difficult task to do. To remember Allah at the moment of calamity is already difficult. But when you're blinded by the worldly life, when you're blinded by society, when you're blinded by the position that Allah gave you, when you know that, for example, like you have, let's just talk about police officers, because it's very, you see a lot of videos where, police officers, they abuse their authority. And it's so easy for them to do so. When they see a person of, black color, for example, right? And they can immediately say that, this guy's a criminal because of his skin color. I'm going to treat him a certain way because I know he's a criminal. I know it for sure, 100%, 1,000%. And they abuse their authority. And they have no fear of reprimand, of the law, of because they know that they can get away from it easily, right? It's so easy to be intoxicated with power. And we see this throughout history. All of the kings and all of the rulers of the past, they were intoxicated by the level of power that they had, to the point where they did whatever they want. They killed whoever they wanted to. They married whoever they wanted to. Right? The difficulty of having patience when you have power is something very difficult for men. Now I'm talking about like people of authority. Let's go to our own household. In our own household, as a father, you have been given the authority over your children. You have been given the position and authority of your own wife, in which you took from her father. And if you abuse that position, fear the day you meet your Lord. Fear the day that you will meet your Lord and you have to question. You have to be questioned for what you did. Let's just go somewhere more simple than that. You own a pet. You're an owner of a pet. And you don't feed the pet. You just have the pet because, it's a fad, it's a trend. Everyone has a pet, so you have a pet. But you don't give that pet its right. Fear the day that you meet your Lord. Do you understand? Position of authority exists in life more than we know. If you're a boss at your workplace, right? Or you're just, you're somebody who is leading people in the parking lot, right? You're navigating people in the parking lot, and somebody, he hasn't been to the masjid before, and he parks somewhere he's not supposed to, but it's his first time. Since you have that security jacket on, and you approach that person, approach them with kindness. Don't have assumptions. Don't be like, brother, this is not where you're supposed to park. Follow the rule. That person, who knows? This is his first time here. And because of the way you treat them, they'll never come to this masjid again. They never want to come to them because of because of you not treating them, that person rightfully. Position of authority is very easy to take over that position. Yusuf alayhi salam, not only did he not abuse his position, he recognized Allah's power over him and over his family. Because why? He's accepting his family into a place where he pretty much owns. He pretty much owns Egypt. He can do whatever he wants. If he can invite whoever he wants into Egypt and have them stay permanently, what other power does he have? But yet, he recognizes that it is Allah that allowed him to do this. Udkhulu Misra, insha'Allah, by the will of Allah, not me, not by my will. You're entering Egypt not because of me. It is because of Allah. Aminin, with safety and security. Who can provide safety and security for his family right now? Who can do that? Yusuf. He can make sure that they live a lavish life. He can make sure that nobody bothers them. He can make sure that his father and his mother or his aunt stay in the high palace and make sure that their life is comfortable. Safety and security. He can do that. Out of everybody in Egypt, he's able to do that. But he recognizes that it is only Allah that provides that. Insha'Allah min al-aminin. Do you understand? In every scene, when we meet or we get to see what Yusuf alayhi salam does, to me is breathtaking. It makes me want to meet Yusuf so much more. And I know for a fact that somebody who's better than Yusuf is our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every time I get close to Yusuf alayhi salam and I gain love for Yusuf, I gain the same amount of love and respect for our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if we know and we read the seerah of our prophets, he goes through, if not the same, much more worse than Yusuf. And the patience and the level of patience that our Prophet Muhammad has, it gives you, that example to follow. Now, there's one more point I wanted to focus on here, because I feel that if not all of us, the majority of us, we struggle with, and that is the struggle of family members and close relatives. In the example of Yusuf alayhi salam, khalas? In the example of Yusuf alayhi salam, we see how he treated not only his parents, but how he treated his arham or aqriba, his relatives. Or arham is our relatives from the same womb, or blood relatives, or the relatives from your family lineage, right? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions in a few places in the Quran the word arham. In Surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we do this every Friday, to fear Allah. Now, why should we fear Allah with people that we share the room with? It is as if Allah knows what we're going to, not as it is as if, but Allah knows what we're going to go through with people who we have close relationships with. right? It's like a premonition that you're going to have issues with people that you're close with. So fear Allah with them. Because why would you have to fear Allah with people that you're kind with? You're always going to be with them. You're always going to have good relationships. That's not the case. You're going to have bad relationships with people. So treat them as if you fear Allah with that treatment. Fear Allah through the womb. Right? And again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ahzab, He says, النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسكم وأزواجه أمهاتهم وأولو الأرحام بعضكم أولى ببعض. Now the scholars mention that it says so it says the Prophet is more worthy of the believers than themselves, right? So the Prophet is more worthy than the believers than themselves. And his wives are in a position of their mothers, and those of blood relationships more entitled to inheritance in the decree of Allah. So in this ayah, Allah is preferring those who are close to us through our inheritance. Right? So the preference here is with who? It's with the people who we share the womb with. The preference is with those who we share the womb with. There's explicit kind of how would say it? The way Allah wants us to treat our close relatives is through preference. Why? What are we preferring them to? It's just like how the previous ayah was kind of like portrayed, that we will find issues with those who we have relationships with. Is no doubt about it. So preferring them is the way we treat them. Do you understand? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again in Surah An-Nisa, He says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. He says again in Surah An-Nisa, He says, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. He says, worship Allah, Tawheed. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Do not associate Allah with any other partners. And then after that, in the same sentence, in the same breath, He says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And treat your parents with goodness and kindness. And then He says, وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى. And then He talks about relatives. Qurba is Qurba are people who are close to you, relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. And the orphans and the poor. Treat these people with goodness and kindness. In the same ayah. But it's attached to what? Worship of Allah. So through being kind and good to your parents, relatives, the orphans and the poor, being good to them is a way of worship towards Allah. Is a way of worshiping Allah. Allah here adds relatives, qurba, emphasizing that we as Muslims should be good to those who are close to us, or at least share wombs with, blood ties, right? So if you're not thankful to your parents, then you're not really thankful to Allah. So they both go hand in hand here, right? Now, subhanAllah, you know, it's one thing to know all of this information. Now, it's one thing to know what Allah is trying to tell us. Be good, be kind, and stuff like that. Well, we can take it as it is. Be good, be kind, but it's another level to be shown an example how to be good to them. It gives you something that you can use and practice. And we get that example through the story of Yusuf. Through the story of Yusuf, not only we see how Allah wants us to treat our relatives and our parents, but He gives us the best example to do so. And that example we can use in our daily lives. You understand? Like it's one thing to go to school, to be an engineer, right? And then when you actually take a job as an engineer, you're like, oh man, I do not know what I'm doing. I know the information, but practically, I've never had any practice or any type of skills, or I've never done this before, right? But when you have examples to follow, physical examples, visual examples, it's easier for you to do that. Just like the Quran, in a hadith. When you read the hadith, and you read the seerah of the Prophet, and you read the Quran, and you put them all together, it helps you not only that you know the information, but you can actually use it in your daily life. You can use it to practice. It's an example for you to follow. And that's what we want from these stories. We don't want all these other details, the names of so-and-so, the place where they're going, what happened in between. We don't want that. We just want to go straight to the lessons. That's what we want. And that's what Allah provides for us. Very clearly, right? So, subhanAllah, when we're talking about this ayah, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, to be good to your parents and those who you share wombs with. In the next ayah, Yusuf alayhi salam takes his birr, takes his goodness and kindness towards his parents to another level. And with that, inshallah, I'll share that, inshallah, in the next class. Inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wa jazakallahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.